Anybody?
So I will officially call our meeting to order and our first.
Except
Our first order of business is to accept the minutes from January 26th, February 23rd, and March 23rd. I think if no one has any comments or corrections, we can accept them as a bundle. Is that correct? Correct.
I have one small, I don't know how particular you are, but we do this in Conservation Commission. Laura Lee's name is spelled wrong. I'm not sure the date, it's the second set of, so the March one under the third city council head start, and there are people's names attached to questions and comments. She is the second one out on the bottom. It's an eye on the end.
So.
Pronounce Laura Lee, not Laura Lack, so a bit different. Why throws myself included.
Any other corrections to the minutes? There a motion to approve? Wait, first, second, all those in favor? It passes,
Josh, second.
yes. Petlicoff. Okay. What do we have to do?
Nothing. I said, I think Lorelei seconded.
Oh, thank you.
I think it was a tie. It was a tie.
Okay.
It's
okay. Thank you. Okay, great. You have that down. Our next order of business is the community engagement committee update. Is getting there.
Do we have an update? I can just say I talked with Peter just before.
Oh,
For people who are interested, we have a 4-page document we're working on to support and integrate the community efforts to get the climate action plan in place, not only this year, but to have something in place for next year. So we're thinking of a series of community conversations that will kick off this year and say this is the first annual. So if this is still in the working stage, and I'll be talking to Peter and Kate and Bill Lyons is away, or he would like to be, but he's done a lot of the forming of the words. And the committee has had dialogues for several weeks. And I don't know if there's several people there who want to add a little bit about what you're taking away, so people will know where we're going, and then we'll bring it up to a formal presentation here after we make sure we're coordinated and making complementing, not doing duplication, so we can bring it forward and have this committee support. So does anybody go ahead?
Yeah, we had planned to have the first community conversation in May after the climate action plan consultants do their meeting on May 4th, but we hadn't yet seen the city newsletter describing that in more detail. So we just, some of the group felt like it would be good to wait as part of the coordination, so that we don't, that we're most effective.
And to piggyback on that, I feel that we should check in with the consultant on the order of the topics of those conversations. So to say, hey, look, we've got 3 or 4 of these lined up. Here's the topics. Which one of these should be done in what order to support the work that they're doing on the CAP?
So I have a question. There is a series of conversations, so not just one.
We were thinking to have, it's still conceptual. For May, there would be a conversation. June, there'd be a conversation. July, August and September, so it'd be like a series.
Gotcha.
We already have the library. Due to the sustainability fair, she said, I want to support you guys. I want to do this. So we can make it happen at the library. So we already have a community of practice wanting to make this happen. And I think that the most difficult thing is to get everybody coordinated rather than the silos. And everybody has goodwill, but it doesn't work unless we get the communication. And that takes time. And in some ways, my daughter-in-law said when she retired, she always worked at the pace of trust. And I thought that's really not always the quickest way, but when you go with people you trust and you know everybody has the right will, that's what we're trying to create. So that, and that's what we're bringing up and not trying to do.
Oh, that's okay, sorry. So, I think conceptually it's a great idea, but is the goal of this going to be to convene a group of, community stakeholders on issues like building codes or transportation? Or is it to be like a forum for community members to air their grievances or just talk about anything climate related? What are you hoping to get out of it?
I think what would you like to have? I'll tell you what would you like to have?
I think a little bit of both, but I feel like if it were to be stakeholder engagement, like people who are directly impacted by the topics we select, there would have to be more coordinated promotion. And because everybody here knows different people within those industries, we want to make sure that we get those people there and not just, put out a newsletter and hope for the best.
This is me speaking. The committee, everybody. Whatever we do, whether it's just stakeholders, the choir, or it's a choir and whom they're singing to. My feeling is if there is a gathering, the end result would people would feel energized and inspired.
Mhm.
People feel energized and inspired when they own it. So I wouldn't see us coming in as experts giving people information. Effie, you had a good term for people who are informed, what the
Content informants.
Yes.
let's say it again.
Content informants.
I love the way that the group memory, content informants. How do you like that? So they make content informants. So we don't come in and say, how do you feel about something? I think that's irresponsible. So we get the best information we can. Not as experts, but this is what best practices. So if we're going to talk about the PED walking energy plan, we get Josh to come in and talk about, here's what we did, here are the highlights. Then there would be a community engagement. And I've done this in the library many times. Wake up into 5 people, digest what it is, add your questions, come back together as a community. So we have many skilled people in this room on how to make it experiential, hands-on, community involvement. And I don't know if that, so we would have, my hope would be that people would come and once they had it, when we do mobility and the people are hot onto bikes, if they had a good time, they might come back to hear on how do you do building codes. And then we say, oh, that could go. And so we would start to build a community that liked each other, trusted each other, became informed by each other, because sustainability, as we all know, is not a linear solution. It's a system solution. I have another slide that tells it's really, we need to have a system solution with an inspiring story that creates change. That's.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Just.
No, I think it was, well, it's sort of, I think we've talked about it before, but just to clarify, like the series would be based on sectors that are relevant to the climate action plan. So
buildings and energy, transportation, waste and disposal, resiliency. And that is why the series would be, is because we would take each of those topics as a separate conversation and kind of dig that a little deeper.
That's very helpful, that was my first question.
Yeah.
Because I think that the important part is really the coordination between those, and my only concern would be making sure that if we're facilitating this dialogue with the community, that trickles its way to the CAP consultants and helps them in that process, that is just additional community engagement for them. That, you know, is probably not reasonable for them to be doing in addition to all the other things they have planned, but is still viable information, but making sure that we're making it clear that, you know, these are conversations and they're information, but I guess my concern would be that people would come and have a consensus about something, and then the CAP comes out and it's not exactly what they, you know, what the topic focus was there, because it's, you know, from a different perspective. It's not, the CAP is right for our city as a whole, and those conversations are going to be individual contribution based, so they're naturally going to be a little bit different. So just making sure that in that process, it's not ever pitting like community against plan, you know, making sure that it's clear how those things develop and that it goes both ways, right? That we're getting information from the CAP consultants about what those main topics are, and then we make sure that those are, you know, looking like they're gonna look when that plan comes out, and then on the other side, making sure that that community engagement makes it back to the consultant. So it's really full circle and they're engaged together, because I think if any part of that is disjointed, I would just worry that maybe it's doing harm in that trust process. That's so important.
I can add to that too. I think it's really interesting to see this come together, because we've talked about the CAP having this additional community engagement piece, and I was always like, how's that gonna look? And this is kind of how it's gonna look. We're starting to form that, so it's really great. And I think, to Herb's point, I think we really do need to engage a CAP consultant just to keep that dialogue, make sure it fits, that we're all on the same page. We haven't even finished planning the first meeting, really. But the idea is a lot like what Bert said. It's going to be some presentation material, but then breaking up into groups and giving information back to the consultant. So similar in that engagement dialogue process with groups, so people can hear each other say things, and then that all gets brought back. So I think it could fit really well. I just think, and they're prepared for it. The consultant is prepared for this additional community engagement. They just, you know, I couldn't really describe it because I don't know what it's about. So I think, you know, Bert and I are going to talk, and we're going to try to figure out a way to make that fit in. But I think it probably makes sense, obviously, to go after the first meeting on Thursday, but I think it will support that meeting and support the next steps of the CAP really well. So it's just a matter of putting it.
It'd be really great to be able to have those topic dates at that first meeting and be able to, like, no, this first meeting, it's broad. It's what's a CAP, it's here's the process. Maybe like an intro, these are the types of things, and then be able to be like, if you're interested in one or any of these topics, like here are, you know, and maybe it's not the exact date and all the details, but it's, you know, the first week of every month or something like that to get people that kind of like next steps, they don't just like follow up with like continued engagement.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet, if I could speak for the committee.
Well, maybe even just to introduce the idea, and I think we're going to get a good mailing list out of all the people that
Yeah.
come.
Yeah,
And then that interest, we can
yeah.
have people that we know are interested in follow up with.
One other aspect. The committee, several people here have done a yeoman's job of getting Bright Action up and running. 33 families now,
33 last check, yeah.
33 families. So we are now in a position with a community developed years trial of Bright Action to enable citizens who care to look at the sectors and say, those sectors are too big. Go to Bright Action, look under the sector and see what you can do in your own life and in your own system. So this is where I think we can reinforce the messages and we have something in place. So when I say accelerating and scale, I couldn't believe that we would have right action in place, and that took almost what, year, two? A year, a full time. So that's why I say we're on the ground running with a lot of stuff and ready to go. And that's why if we can synergize, because we don't have time to wait 2 or 3 years. So to synergize and get it going now would be great.
Is there, maybe I missed this, because I missed that last meeting, but in light of what John was saying from the sustainability fair, is there a place on the city website where progress is of like, where are we with the CAP and what are the questions that are, what are the upcoming meetings? Because I feel like there's a large segment that still isn't getting the information. And when we did the superintendent search, which is related but not, we ended up creating an email for that committee as well as its own website. And we had 12 focus groups and we had summary of the focus groups on there, what the questions were, and that was how we got a lot more engagement.
That code on the all the flyers takes you to the CAP page
Okay,
and then the different events that are linked
okay,
to that.
but just keep pushing that.
And then we'll be populating that as we go.
Okay,
Dating that, is that you? Because I'm impressed, whoever you is, new information keeps popping up there,
We're trying to link all the.
which
all
is
the,
great.
News, the press releases, all the upcoming events, all the sustainability stuff. It's very hard
And,
to keep that.
and the nice thing is that QR code from whatever flyer you pull it from, it's gonna take you to that page. So
okay,
it's always gonna be the most current stuff, hopefully was always in the front, and then we're working our way through.
okay.
There also is like an email list that you can sign up for. It's, right now it says, are you interested in volunteering or interested in something about the climate, but you can input your email and get more information. I get all the emails and it's going on for the next release for all the events.
Oh, perfect. Okay, see, I knew it was on the question. Kathy, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to say about the community engagement committee. We're also called Portsmouth Climate Action, and largely through Jessica's husband's efforts along with the committee, we have a logo and we had stickers to hand out at the sustainability fair. So I'm gonna pass them around and people can help themselves. And, you know, aside from the sustainability fair, we're getting websites updated, Bright Action going, so we really have a lot going on. And anyone wants to join us Wednesday nights at 7. We'd love to see.
Did anybody have any, are you finished with the community action engagement presentation?
Yes.
I actually have a question, Margaret, you may have started my question answering my community action. Just want to know who to give this list of people who signed up to the Kate, based on what I just heard.
For people interested in the cap.
This is not specifically the cap, so this is for our table. And as I was chatting with people, I mean, this is a handwritten thing, it's just like, sign up to join our email list and learn more. How's that for open ended?
Okay, ready to sign up.
Perfect. Well, if no one has anything else to add to the conversation on community engagement, I think we can move on to the Bright Action dashboard demo.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jack.
No, I just realized along those email lines, Kate and Peter, you had asked about all of the participants and if they would be interested in staying engaged and connected, and I went around and spoke to all of them. They pretty much all said yes, and so I don't know.
We have like a mass.
I'm working on a master list, yeah, that I can pass on.
That'd be great.
Send them all a thank you email this week, and so just kind of give them the heads up that they may see more stuff. to see about.
Yeah, if you give us whoever you send that to. I don't know if you're gonna blind copy everybody or just copy everybody. If you just copy everybody, we'll just take it from that. So you don't have to assemble anything separate.
I've been
Although it
historically
might be
fine
hard-
copying everybody, but they all seem to want to connect with one another, so maybe I will do this, this time around. I've sort of been doing that out of respect for them, but everybody seemed motivated. Actually, a lot of participants were like, can we just all get together and
Yeah,
so
What's the best way to do the Right Action demo? Is it for me to connect in through Zoom? We don't have anybody on Zoom.
We don't have anybody on Zoom, so we could go from the website, or we could do it as share screen from Zoom. If you want, you wanted to sit here and do it?
Yeah, I'm happy, I'm fine to do that now.
I think since we don't have any participants, I guess we'll just try and keep an eye on that. But it doesn't look like it at this point, so. I guess if we,
You just open a browser and I can jump on your computer and.
that's probably easy.
Bookmarks, so I can't always remember. It should work. Hey, there we go. Okay, so, yeah. Have you seen that logo before? Ever see it just? All right, and this big photograph here too.
No, from Madison.
That's Allison, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful photograph.
It's
Really nice. That's what I was gonna say. Give that to us.
Where is it?
That's on the.
Your silence. Looking across. Okay, so for folks that have not registered before, this is what you see. You come in the first time if you're not logged in. This is what you see, and they've got, you can join the challenge. There's also a why join page. And if I'm going too deep, people just let me know. I think Effie and some others wrote this great intro right here. I think it's really nice and powerful. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but that's why join. So it's a little description about who we are and why this site is here and what we're asking for them to do. This, without even logging in, you can see Portsmouth right now has 33 homes, as Bert was saying, have registered with the system. And our goal is to get 250. That's why this number right here, 250, is here. Because we're shooting to have, that's our stretch goal, 250 Portsmouth homes signed up. And the story I was telling last Friday to explain to folks is I was linking this to the CAP. So we have the CAP and we're going to create goals in the CAP. And this tool, if we can get 250 homes, that's great. Even if we got 150, it gives us enough data that we can then use that data to say, how many homes are there in Portsmouth? And then we can start developing what are our metrics, right? What's our baseline? Where are we starting from? What is our goal overall? So we know we're not going to get data on every single house, but this is more empirical data than, no disrespect to say UNH or other organizations that create, data on greenhouse gas. Hopefully we get better data from this because it is from the residents are providing to us. And then this is, I think this is New Hampshire overall. It gives you some other stats. And so this is just the welcome page. I'll log in so we can get into the meat of this. And so, and I won't go through the pages to register. Folks haven't done it yet, please do, and you'll see what that's like. I think there's 3 screens worth of questions that you have to answer about what kind of dryer do you have? Is it electric? Is it gas? What kind of stove? What's your heating like? It even gets into how many cars do you have? What type of car? How many miles do you drive a year? So it gets pretty specific, but it's not too onerous that people, I think, would just abandon in the middle, completing the registration. And one other thing I want to mention is we're working on getting Portsmouth community power set up in here so that it is, we have 4 tiers. And we've got a meeting with Bright Action next week to talk about how do we get that set up in there, because right now for electricity, all that you'll see when you register is Eversource. And so we'd like to also add in the 4 tiers of community power, so that folks can go in and select what they have, better data for us. Okay, so this is myself, and I'll be honest, I've just started putting the information in here, but I definitely have work to do. Because if you look at here, you would say, here's my house, is New Hampshire. I'm like, I'm not very special. And so this is great, because it kind of gives you a starting point of where you're at. And there's 2 people in my home, that's why it's doing the multiplier of 10.4 to the 20.7 or 20.8. And so that's kind of what it looks like, and here's some other countries and other data. Few people asked me at the fair, what about other states? They wanted to see Massachusetts, they wanted to see Maine, which is great questions. And what we probably should do, and I'll probably go out and pull that information and have that, I can get it from Bright Action, have that in our back pocket.
So can you adjust how it looks by adding that kind of data? Oh, you can't adjust.
No, and to let that, yeah, and Bright Action, they're not doing any more development on this version. Right now, they're in development as a new version of Bright Action, which is supposed to have more features and be more user-friendly. The user interface is supposed to be more intuitive. And so we're probably 2 or 3 months out before they launch that. So this is kind of, it is what it is. But it's still pretty good for what we have right now. And here's some right here. Here's some of actions that I have. Choose green energy. So I've got that. Plant a tree. I have that. See these. I haven't marked them as complete yet. Upgrade air conditioner. Install electric heat pump. These are all things I've started to put in here that I want to do this year. Here's one, for example, that I've completed. I marked that as complete. And so this just gives me some basic information here about CO2 reduced, savings per year, and total points that I have. If I get into myself, into going into actions, I'll just focus on me as an individual first, before we then look at what is it, the community view of this. Here are the main categories, or all of the categories. There are 7 of them here. And under each one of these, there are a number of actions that individuals can sign up for. So here's like, installing smart power strips, lighting controls, LEDs, things like that. Bulbs, drying, even putting your clothes out on a clothesline. And this all makes an impact on your footprint, your carbon and your greenhouse gas footprint. And so here's one I showed you before that I've got that one in progress. So there's quite a few of these. If there are any that we want to add, they always want to hear from us. They want to hear from all the communities if there's additional actions that they don't have. And if a couple communities ask for it, they'll add it on here. We don't, at least in this version, we don't have the ability to go add whatever we want. This is, you get what you get when it comes to the actions. One thing I think that's really great is when you get, let's see, click on one here. For each one of these, as you click on it, you can get more information about what it is and how you can make a difference. What's your impact and the points. So it gives you, right, scroll through here, it gives you quite a bit of, and some have more information and some have less. I've seen a few that have 1 through 4, and you can click on there. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of really good information for folks that may not be familiar with installing a heat pump, for example, what it is and why the benefits. That one in particular, again, I have you can really scroll through, there's a lot of good information. So, okay, so those are the actions that you can sign up for. Any questions so far? Yes. Oh,
I have a broad question. Do you know in the next version, if, like I've done this several times since signing up, gone to the app store to see if there's just like a Bright Action I could download to my phone to just click the button and it never doesn't at least pop up in the Apple App Store. Do you know if that's part of the next iteration? That
Yes.
it'll just be.
The next one should have a mobile app for both in the Google Play Store and an Apple App Store, yeah.
My question is. This definitely seems a little bit overwhelming for someone who might not be involved in sustainability. What is going to incentivize them to keep coming back and logging the changes they've made or into change?
Yes, what is, right? I think that's for all of
I
us to
think it's a
answer.
dollar sign. I think those dollar signs. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Like if you don't care about sustainability, you might care about saving money too.
And also they look at gaming applications.
Oh,
to
I see.
motivates people like.
I was gonna say,
They
it is
added
the one.
badges, you saw them on one screen, I don't know how to use them yet, but that was one thing, and the other thing they have is groups. So they can get a little competitive thing going between groups,
So it's designed.
but
Kind of
we're
like a
not there
video
yet.
game?
It's designed with,
Kind of like a video game.
yeah, well, that's what they look at
Okay.
for ideas for how to make this enticing to people.
The next
But I
version,
agree with Peter, the dollar signs too.
I like seeing that on. It's another hook.
and hold on one second, and is Effie was saying, the next version, they've shown us a little bit of it. They're trying to do more of this gaming competitive feel. And what they would like for us to do is try to get groups within the city. So you've got, church, I'm gonna set one, you can go in and add, you can add new teams. So your church, for example, could add a team, or the high school or middle school, whatever it may be, could add teams in here and then have competitions. So you're competing with other groups within the city. And as you continue to add members and you take actions, you can see who's in first, second, third. And I think here, this is like give an example. Someplace in here, I have to find it again. Where it shows, there are some other groups and here's two right here, but I think I saw someplace else where there were more groups in the state of New Hampshire than you could see, so you can compare within Portsmouth, but even you can compare in New Hampshire too. And you could even challenge other cities. So Portsmouth could reach out and that's the great thing, if we got other communities in New Hampshire using Bright Action, then we'd publicly issue a challenge to the city of Dover.
Bear to bear.
Well, here's the
Smackdown.
Gosh, what year was that? 2010? With Keene, we had a challenge, a greenhouse gas challenge. I think we tied.
That's classic.
Is this it? Back to what,
It wasn't as fun.
it wasn't as fun. Back to what,
PR person on that one.
so what Effie was talking about, I mean, if say Keene was using this tool. And we can work with Bright Action to keep track of when the next city is gonna pop up here in New Hampshire. I guess it doesn't have to be New Hampshire, it could be Massachusetts or someplace else too, where we could, challenge them and say, hey, we're calling you out and, we're gonna get, who's gonna get to whatever level it is, right? It doesn't have to be about volume either, it really needs to be about, proportional to maybe the residents of the city or something like that. But that, there's another reason why people would come back. Is, if you're interested in it, you're curious about where you are, but also, we've thrown the gauntlet down to some other town. Chad, you had the question.
So a few things on this, like gamification process, gamification of any type of app is highly effective. I think one of the best examples is Duolingo. If you look at Duolingo, they talk a lot about losing your streaks, you compete, you can see on the leaderboard, so it's this comparison to other people. So with one of the questions is there a way to publicly share their information easily of how they're doing? That's one thing. Another is a big challenge in other towns is a highly effective way to do it. And then it's a reason of why do they need to come back in? And so it's like there's the barrier of entry to put in all the information. And it sounds like there's not a lot of information to put in, so the drop rate and the bounce rate is probably not super high. But that's something to really look at to see, is there a bounce rate of how many people click to go sign up versus how many people filled out all the information? Because what sometimes happens when you go to fill out a form, you get halfway through and you're like, oh, I don't have that information. I don't know my heating bill. I'll come back to it. And then they don't ever come back. So I think that's an important thing to look at. And then comparing this to the corporate world, in the corporate world, there's a lot of these type of challenges. So Fitbit was a big one a few years ago. Who's doing the most steps, right? So I think being able to have some sort of a challenge between the different areas is a really good way to do it. And what also corporates do is they have obviously their carbon credits, and I'm wondering if there's any way to connect some sort of like carbon credit system to it to go into local nonprofits where they could get involved with that somehow. But I think the big thing is people might go in once and not come back, which is it's good that they go in there. It's a really nice interface, but what hooks them to come back? I don't know if it's like notifications or prompts like, oh, you lost your spot on the leaderboard, or hey, we're all sharing it out this month on our social media. What prompts them to continue to come back and update their information? And then the last piece is there any way that they can connect to their data? I saw you had Nest up there or Google Home. Is there a way that they can automatically plug in that information so Nest automatically is feeding the information in?
I tell you, when we started this, there was a gal who was running Bright Action. You know, and now she's hired a couple other people. You're not getting that.
It's a very impressive base.
It's super
But the
nice.
thing is, a
But-
lot of
but-
what you
but
say
gotta
about
finish it.
social marketing is things we've talked about, but we're all volunteer staff.
Yeah.
So we can't lean on Herb and Fred too much, but we could have, for example, No Mo May. We've all heard about that, right? So we could make that the month we send out social marketing bulletins about things to do with gardening. And, you know, all the gas-powered machines you're using in your garden and alternatives and using wood mulch from the city. And, you know, different things like that. And then plastic-free July, we can have other kinds of, you know, there were something, I don't know how many actions in here related to plastic and waste. So we call them out to people and say, hey, you know, only 10 households have signed up for this, but we think a lot of you are doing this already, so check it out.
Even you can do that through if they're signed up, you can send notices to everybody who's signed up.
Is that right? We
Yeah.
can send emails to them.
Newer version's gonna have more opportunities to do that. Of course, you have to be careful not to spam people too much. But there is also gonna be a lot more opportunity to put information in here that's relevant to citizens. For example, a calendar or a running list of events that are coming up in the community. And so hopefully that's gonna help us have relevant content.
Yeah.
Which somebody might come back and say, oh, I wonder what climate action events are coming up in the next 2 months. And this could be through Portsmouth Climate Action, this could be something that we do, you know, as volunteers, is keep feeding that calendar, that list of stuff. And not necessarily at the city, it could be, hey, SELT is, you know, we develop these partnerships where SELT will say to us, hey, can you put this on your tool? And, you know, then there's relevant content. But I like everything that you're saying, the report is great. And I'm curious if the new version is gonna link with people's social media accounts. So if there's some way to do that too, like, hey, I just put this on, and then put something out on Facebook or whatever. And then other, people are like, hey, I wonder, what's Herb doing? I want to go check out, what's that Bright Action thing?
And I think while we're starting and ramping this up, we really do social marketing to a much bigger group. We've got a couple of mailing lists and I'm sure we could develop them further. And it's a very small subset that are signed up on Bright Action. So we can say it's No Mow May to our big mailing list and suggest, hey, go to Bright Action. They'd have to sign up and that might be motivating. So that's how I see it.
And we have to be realistic, how many houses this year homes are gonna sign up on here? Fred and I are the ones that threw out the stretch goal, the 250. And so they were asking us, well, what's your goal for this? But Fred and I are like, be great if we got 250, we're 33 now. So, it's something for us to aspire to and push, to try to get that, but then that data, and when we meet with Bright Action next week, we're gonna find out how do we pull that community data out of here, so when we look at, here's Portsmouth, do the whole city. So when we look at, here's the city, there's 33 homes, how do we get that data out of the system for that? Because then we're gonna want to use that to put together a dashboard or something on the city side to say, okay, here's where we're at. So does that make sense?
So the value that the users get out of it is ideas for how they can get more involved, how they can reduce costs, how they can compete with their friends and share it out. It's just what are the main what are the main values that you think the users get? Because I think it looks beautiful. I think it's easy to navigate, but what's the clear value proposition?
So let me go a step further. We've talked about putting links and information for NH Saves and other programs that that residents of Portsmouth are eligible for. Because there's so many valuable programs that the state has and NH Saves people don't know about, or rebates for EV. For example, we could put links on the new version. This version, not so much, but the new version, we're gonna be able to do that. So say, hey, if you want to save some money, if you want to look at a list of opportunities to save money, let's go to Bright Action. And yeah, so I think Peter, back to what Peter's saying, goes down.
People like the idea of saving money.
Yeah. So.
And the backlinks improve your SEO as well, so.
Yeah, that one, I don't know for, so I get what you're saying, but I think this is just very specific and very unique, and I wouldn't, probably people aren't gonna be finding this out there necessarily. I mean, it's gonna be that they, scan the QR and there's actually a link on that site to Bright Action. Find us in ways like that. Attending events. Okay, I could go on and on, but
It's really nice.
Resilience button. Sorry.
and where was the
It's in
reason?
the actions.
No, it's gonna raise the building
Yeah.
4 feet.
Yeah. What is individual action?
Yeah.
Resilience here.
I feel like, Jazz, that's one of the added values, is that this is just a good resource for big and small steps you can take on your sustainable journey. You can just go in there and pick a topic and say, okay, yep, I'm doing that, oh, no, I haven't thought about that yet, oh, yeah, and it's just sort of a good resource tool to kind of gauge where you're at and what your next step might be.
I think that's neat.
I'll just keep scrolling down.
Yeah, the ideation of what you can do as
Great
a
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ideas. Yeah. Just say, I
Keep
you
scrolling down.
don't make any money about it.
One more, couple more goes. 3 more.
I think we should stop here. It's getting scary.
Yeah.
I always thought Portland was safe.
Great.
But this one I love too. I'd love to see this up here, because I think that, that's something that everybody could do. Or more people could do in their communities.
We also have the youth-friendly actions. I think we looked at those once with this group.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then so now, now I have that filter on for any of these categories that I go to. It's gonna show only those things that are focused on things you can do, dedicate or do with you. So, yeah, I'm really excited I'm not gonna bash this version too much, and this is great that they got this started, but. I think they're really putting a lot of effort into the new version, and I think they're really counting on that one, helping them really launch this. I don't know how many cities there are across the country, but there's quite a few that they have right now signed up.
Do you have a time frame about when?
2 to 3 months, I think, is about. I'll ask Lisa again when we meet with her next week, Fred and I. But I think it's going to be about another 2 to 3 months. And we'll probably, they'll probably give us an early peek of it too. And if we're somehow able to sign up as a tester, I'd be more than happy, so we get an early take on it and able to get feedback. Yeah.
One thing that I would really love for all the work that's being put into it, what's embedded in terms of benefits, is if we're going to move where we want to go, we all need to become systems thinkers. So embedded in the platform, if you don't go on there with a linear point of view that now we're going to do it, there's this multitude of things that are ongoing and in process, and that's kind of where we need to develop our thinking. So I think it's a good tool getting us there, which is talked about, but I think that's what it does.
Yes. All right,
Great.
good.
Sir.
Move on to the next agenda.
Sure.
Great job, guys. Really.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
So Mark, we are on to your presentation about recycling of yard waste. Let us know where you need to be.
Sure. Okay, so I originally grew up in a town called Smithtown, New York, and I have a lot of friends there. And I think last year around springtime, I have a big garden, and I like to get wood chips. I have mulch in my garden. And the garden place won't be whatever. Then I happened to talk to my friend who lives there, he's been there his whole life. I was like, oh, we get a wood chips for free. Yeah, we have a big program. We have a recycling program where they collect all the wood chips. They have a mulching machine. It's all bagged. And cars line up around the block when they announce it's a pickup day for wood chips. It's probably one of the most popular things in the town. And I just pulled up on the internet here. Okay. Main firm buys up New Hampshire biomass plants, including Springfield's. They're carrying between 25 and 30 tons of wood chips from logging jobs, enough for about 1 hour electric generation. Is it better to have this, or is it better to put it in our homes? Which is better? So I started doing some research, and for initial cost, town said it's worthy. I don't know how they funded it, whatever. And it's been paying dividends for years. And I think my suggestion, I don't know how the committees operate too much, but I think what might be a good idea is to have a blue ribbon committee special just to get a Portsmouth wood chip mulch recycling program in place. And then the committee could explore working with the town, working with Smithtown or other towns that have similar programs. There is no doubt that everybody in the town, rather, even if it was free, we couldn't do free, 50 cents, $1 a bag, they would line up to get that mulch as opposed to going to that pre-stuff from Home Depot. That costs whatever per bag, and you know that more of a carbon footprint making that stuff than getting it right here. And as far as getting enough material for a program, that's not gonna be an issue. We can coordinate that with the surrounding towns. So it could be a whole bunch of things, it could be a huge benefit. And it's achievable. Because it's not like we're reinventing something new. It's already being done. The wood chippers are there, the baggers are there, it's all there. We can literally copy one of these towns' programs. So, you know, maybe that's the way to go, because this committee itself does a great job in multiple things, but maybe an offset or a blue ribbon committee specific to this project. Getting it up and running, getting all the information, working towns. I think this is a wonderful idea, and I don't know anyone in the town that's a resident that gardens that wouldn't appreciate getting mulch, wood chips or whatever, because I go to a recycling plant and I go there and every now and then bring stuff. This is what I see. I see mounds of wood. And I see mounds of bagged leaf clippings. I mean, hundreds of tons a year. I don't know where it goes. Are we paying to get rid of it? Is the city just chopping up on our own and sprinkling around city property? Could that be increased by getting more? Maybe landscapers, they'll charge a nominal fee because they're paying, they must be paying to get rid of it. I don't know what they do with it. Maybe a nominal fee, they drop off their stuff. And then if they want some mulch, we could sell it to them. I don't know, there's all kinds of ways. So I'm not worried about funding this. Maybe the government's gonna give a grant to buy this equipment. But you know, this administration's, so for a small price, and I think in order to sell this to the city, it's gotta be cost neutral. It shouldn't be anything that increases taxes. But the benefit is huge. And it's worked. No doubt it's worked, so I don't know how how this committee wants to hopefully consider moving this along.
Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on that?
Art, let me just see,
Sure.
the projects that you looked into, have they, did I hear you say they were not only cost neutral, but they paid for themselves on above, or are you still just not clear on that?
I'm not clear. All I know is that the town of Smithtown, they initially paid for the machinery to do it. And now, because it's such a benefit to the residents, they're literally, they got to get rid of it. I think they were paying to get rid of it before. And now they're not paying to get rid of it, so that offset the initial
The tipping fees, because that's, yeah, it's the tipping fees
right,
and then the storage, so.
right.
Peter, we've talked about this in the recycling transfer station. There's a new design, isn't there? Could this be
expanding,
possibly part of that?
So I did talk to Brian Getz, who's our DPW rep. He wasn't able to make it tonight. But he was really interested in this program, and this is something that I had in mind for a while, but over at DPW, they currently use it for city property. So whatever they get, they mulch up and put on the cross-country trails at high school, I think, and then around town in different projects, I guess. But he said a big factor plays into it is that the transfer station doesn't have the capacity or the room to really store a lot of that. And they also don't have funding for the equipment right now. So, but it sounds like there is a plan in place for a redesign of the.
They're gonna expand the recycling, not a few years out, at this point, but. That there's a couple different programs they want to do with expand it. I'm sure, this is one of them, something that's operationally makes sense.
So maybe the thought would be to have this shovel ready to go when that expansion happens. We can do all, you know, the Blue Ribbon Committee can get all of it together. And then once that expansion, here you go. Here's the machinery, here's how we're gonna do it, here's how we're gonna charge, it's ready to go. Instead of waiting for that step, we can plan it now.
That and even the PR side of like I didn't know that like I run on the cross country trails all the time, and I didn't know that was the same mulch that I that brought last season.
Right.
You know, like that. I think that's things that
Right.
you know are great to know.
Right, and like I said, we don't know what these other towns are doing, so if it's like, oh, we've got our precious mulch and we're using it all, well, we could find avenues to get more. And it would be a benefit to the people of Portsmouth. So,
Similar to, I mean, we have like large trash day. I forget what it's called.
yeah.
Bulky waste.
Thank you. When you throw out something really big, that's your basement. You know, you can do a similar thing with, 'cause I know like I do specific trips just for limbs. Sorry. You know, I think it would be a way, honestly, a community, just as much of a community engagement project, because I think that there's a lot of responsibility, right? There's a lot of questions, like where does this all go?
yeah, and again, it could easily be expanded.
Right.
Mark, I'm gonna give you credit, because this would fill a current gap that we have, where a good number of people in Portsmouth compost, whether it's through Mr. Fox or they do it at home themselves, or the fancy Lomi countertop composter. But I know Mr. Fox doesn't accept wood or branches or leaves because it's not nutrient rich enough to compost to produce what they're producing with it. But this would be a halfway point for all of the leaves and branches and wood chips, how they could put to use versus not using them at all and letting them just decompose.
It's all here. I mean, it's like Smithtown just does mulch and wood chips, but there's another town on the east end of Long Island. There's a lot of horse farms and a lot of that. They got a lot of manure. Then they make a compost, actual compost. It's fantastic, they say. And they literally give all this away. And it's, what a better way to get rid of this stuff than sprinkle it all over the garden. And we don't know what the other surrounding towns and all these other contractors there. I mean, this company getting all these wood chips, they must be getting to somewhere. It's being trucked in by the hundreds of tons a year. I'd rather see it sprinkled on the ground and put it back into the earth and burn it up in a smokestack. Isn't that what we're all about?
It is. So Mark, first of all, I want to echo what Josh, thank you for bringing this story. This is a great idea. Question, is something like this under the bill or could DPW, is that what on this? So just thinking out loud, but it's probably worth maybe following up with them and finding out what exactly are they thinking independent of this. Of course, the first question that's always going to come to mind is, well, how do we budget for the but that's fair. We do need to keep it down too. What's that?
Because the humans do all the work.
Stop.
So it's not just the equipment.
That's true. Let's look at step at a time. Let's start with the easy one. There may be, just a thought, that there may be federal funding or grants or something that can help to offset at least some of the equipment costs. We should at least look into that.
Right.
Keep it tax neutral that way.
Right.
The other thing that I like about this as a project, and you mentioned just in passing, I think the big impact. That's the lowest possible carbon footprint for putting an inch of mulch on the ground. It's the branch that's cut your neighbor's yard.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Half a mile before cleaning your yard, right? This kind of thing coming out of this committee, being spread out to the community, I think we can get a lot of community support just letting them know what the impact is. And then, Herb, I don't need to short circuit the point, but when it comes to the point where we have to ask for more money for something, and staff is probably what it would be. I'd love to go into a vote or a bill or a discussion in town hall like that with the community backing. You know, if more people than just us. I like it. Let's see us follow up.
Mark was saying, if you get in front of this and do all the analysis,
Mhm.
you can see, you know, what are the actual costs, and including any kind of labor.
So,
And people would be willing to pay a couple dollars.
Right.
And even if it was, you know, I hate the idea of plastic, but, you know, even if you just said, hey, you have to bring your 5 gallon pails.
Right,
And we
right.
charge,
Whatever.
$2 or whatever for
Yeah.
every 5 gallon pail.
Right.
I think people would show up every weekend.
They, speaking with, literally, they line up around the block.
Yeah.
And, I think they got so popular, they had to set a 10 bag minimum.
That's when you know it's working.
It's literally, everyone looks for that day, okay, it's pickup day, and boom, they come. And any of the expenses can be offset. I mean, if you're spending $5 for a bag of mulch at Home Depot, and even if they set it off that costs $1 a bag, they're gonna come.
Yeah.
And that's gonna pay for any labor.
Right.
That's gonna pay for everything. I'm telling you, this is gonna be.
And you're right, that if you can put that kind of analysis together, get in front of it, and say, here's what the actual numbers are. Before people start freaking out about, well, I'm not gonna go raise that money.
Right.
We don't even know how much money it is yet.
Yeah.
Never lose.
That's where let's plan it all now, so when that day comes. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, very doable. And
Mark,
then-
would you be willing to work with us as we start some of
Absolutely.
these conversations?
Absolutely.
You enjoy it?
Yeah, sure.
So am I, for the notes, am I putting that Mark, John are going to do a little footwork and bring back what you're finding out?
Hmm.
Does anybody else, was that put down the notes?
You
So
want to be adding to your list? You want to?
I'm pretty maxed out, right?
So John, and Mark will bring back some of the footwork, how to get this going.
So,
Sorry, to interrupt. Okay, you said our contact at DPW is Brian Getz.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, ED direct.
Okay, I'll drop, I'll drop your,
Send a big CC email.
if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great. Yeah, just get the email too.
Sorry.
I think he's on different email. Oh, he's on, yeah. So, again, this is all up to you, how you run this meeting, then, would you wanna, at some point, have a dedicated Blue Ribbon committee that just deals with getting this thing going, or a subcommittee of this committee, how are you looking to do it?
My feeling, other people have different feeling. Brian's pretty knowledgeable and he might be ahead of the game and say, we have this in place. What we could use is your help, Mark, in this,
Oh, I see.
rather than forming a committee to already,
Oh, I
they
see.
work with us every day,
Right.
all the
I
time.
see.
And so I don't know, but I am assuming they might be that way.
I think you're gonna finally have a pretty good handle on how to deal with all that airways and the problems of space.
Okay.
But they do, I know they do have times when a mulcher will come in and mulch stuff up and they spread it around. That's what I don't know, how they, what the frequency is, what they do with it, what equipment they use, that kind of thing. So those are the questions that.
And to answer your question, Mark, the Blue Ribbon committees are appointed and established by the mayors. We would be able to do that, but we would be able to do a subcommittee on this as a committee. Okay.
And one of the positive things about it too is that I know for a lot of people want to also do compost at the DPW site. And that there's different issues with compost that have to do with pests and odors, and there's not a lot of pests and odors with wood chips and bark mulch and that kind of thing. So if people aren't bringing their kitchen waste there, then you don't have that issue, that side issue. So it can be done easier, I think, the composting facility. The different kind of compost.
Different kind, sure.
Orly, did you get your question?
I just wanted to say thanks because I cannot tell you how many bags of mulch I had to carry from Home Depot with my dad. And it's been rough. I could probably,
Laura, you're still gonna have to carry them. just gonna-
well,
It's on.
less of a drive. I don't know, but thanks for bringing this to our attention.
I don't particularly like getting that pre-dyed bag stuff either, and I'd rather use natural wood chips more. And know that the carbon footprint, all that is really minimal.
Yeah.
Compared, I mean.
We don't know what Home Depot's coming for.
No.
We know that it's not small.
Right, if they're selling it for $5 a bag, you know, they're making a profit on it, there's transportation costs, bagging, contracts, there's all these other costs built into it. And we're not trying to put them out of business because I buy my stuff from them, but or the other places, but this is a way that we really help all the citizens.
Yeah.
So it's great.
That's great.
And this contact is really knowledgeable.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
We are just moving right along here. Our next agenda item is the CAP update.
Plastic waste bags.
So we all know that the meeting, hopefully everybody knows the meeting's next Thursday.
Like 16 other things. It's for this popular date.
Oh, no. What else is happening?
Well, I have kindergarten orientation. Yeah.
First night,
I'm just.
No, Apple.
Keeps coming back.
You can go to the late show or the matinee. for
I'm
Guardian
literally just need seconds. And it's 6:30 to 8:30 in city council.
City council chambers, yep. And so the way they're gonna set it up is the banquet format, we're calling it. So in tables, which is very unusual for the council chambers, so it'll be different. So that people will get to sit around tables. I think we only have enough tables for about 60 people to sit, but we're gonna have other chairs available if we need more. That people can sit in circles and do the same thing. But basically, it's gonna be a series of questions. Each table is gonna go through, they'll have a reporter and a note taker, and then each table will report out. And so the idea is to talk about what we're doing for climate action, what the city's sort of greenhouse gas footprint is and impacts and where we can make a difference. And then hear from people on what they think is important and where they think changes can be made. And just kind of kick off the conversation really, and then hear back from everybody and get that report out. Is the concept, and we're refining the questions now and the organization of it. So a little more.
I think the meeting, the workshop next week is gonna be pretty straightforward, but we also had our volunteer meeting, or our first one, 2 weeks ago now, which a few of you came out for. And we got a good chunk of people, I think, maybe just under 20 people. Yeah, so, and they've been helping to send out flyers, virtually, or just to businesses or to friends, so they're really helping us put the word out and really appreciate it. And if you guys also need more digital materials, and if you want, these are FBI fingerprint as well now. So if you guys need more or need digital files that you'd like to send to anybody, get even more people for next week. Hopefully we won't be over capacity, but we're hoping that we get a good showing.
Problematic.
Oh,
There.
Disrupt the flow.
And there's also a remote option where the preference is in person because I think you'll get a little more out of it, but if you're remote, not that I'm speaking to anybody remotely here, but if you are remote, if there's a lot of remote people, we'll have breakout rooms on Zoom and kind of ready for that. But the thought is that when people are in their sessions, the remote people will have either a group or a couple breakout rooms, and then they'll report out as well. So they'll still be engaged. I think if anybody's watching on YouTube, they'll have to wait, that's that little city seal meeting in progress or something. But that seems like the best we could do for the remote. It's hard to have a remote, it's hard to have a really true hybrid meeting, but that's what we came up with.
So what date is it?
May 4th, Thursday, next Thursday.
Made it fourth, maybe.
That's right.
Zoom in from Oxford.
Did anybody have any questions related to form?
Thank you, Casey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that sounded awesome.
It's doing most of it.
I love round tables and chambers. We should do that more.
Well, they're not round, sorry, they're
Oh.
rectangular,
I think.
but sitting around tables.
Oh.
Sorry, I wish they were round, but we just don't have them.
It'll still work.
Yeah.
All right, we are on to Councillor Denton's standing
Thank you.
proposal.
And- Are we able to pull that up? I don't have it available.
Oh, you don't have it with you.
I have it on my phone. I don't have it.
Let's kind of get to me.
So while we see if we could pull that up, ever since I've been on this committee, it's always been discussed, we want to remain a blue ribbon committee, we want to become a more focused standing committee. Difference essentially is a blue ribbon committee sunsets at the end of every city council term versus a standing committee is there to stay by ordinance if someone does away with the ordinance. We've discussed it here, and the takeaway from the last meeting is, yes, there's interest in becoming a standing committee. So I drafted a ordinance which would do that. It's just a draft. It's pretty simple, and I'm sorry for getting it out just yesterday to everybody. So if everyone had a chance to take a look at it yet, I'll go over it in a couple of moments. But the process from here, if it's something people still want to pursue, would essentially be, and I touched base with the mayor on this, would be bringing it forward at a city council meeting. They would then refer it to, I would refer it to the governance committee and the legal to be reviewed by both for their input. Legal to say, hey, you can do this, you can't do this. Governance committee, just to make sure it makes sense. Then from there, we report back to city council, and it would require 3 readings. So this is a probably 4-month-long process, and there, although it's only May essentially, there's not that much time left in the city council term because we're coming up on the budget. Then during the summer, during one of the months, there's only 1 meeting, and then when you hit fall time, it'll be election season. So with that said, I think this is the right time to discuss it here and then bring it forward and refer to somewhere else. With that said, and I know it's not up there
You
yet.
want me to go get it and bring it down? I'm gonna have to bring it in a thumb drive, because I'm not getting it back.
The would I be able to email it to you from my phone?
I have it on my email, right? Don't I?
Yes, you
I'll
should.
just bring it down on a thumb drive.
You want to log into your Gmail and have them send
No, I'll take my quicker, because they should.
I could,
Or
well,
you join the Zoom and share screen.
yes. If you join Zoom and shares the screen,
Right.
Oh,
that
wow.
technology is impressive.
I have a question that I don't think they'll need wording for. So I know that this was a conversation with Councilor Cook before, as part of the governance. Do we have a feeling, I know she had mentioned that they were looking at these types of things, it kind of just, this is.
This is, so the city councils, the governance committee's going to review schedule committees, and we're in the process of amending the ordinances. One good example, or 2 examples I'll give. One is for the cemetery committee. It was too large and had to be scaled back, so that was an easy change. Another one is for the public arts committee. And if you go through the ordinances, these committees are all set up differently. And here, the way this would take effect is when we look at the actual draft ordinance. Thank you very much, City Manager. The I'd actually start with the bottom, on the last sentence of the ordinance is the effective date. Normally ordinances take effect when they pass 3rd reading. Here, the ordinance would take effect upon adoption of Portsmouth's climate action plan. It would make sense to link the 2, because this mentions the climate action plan in it. And that way, even get adopted by the city council, and this ordinance will already have been adopted by the city council. So once it gets adopted by the next city council, this blue ribbon committee would automatically become. The climate action plan would have to pass,
Yeah,
but as long as that passes, this becomes a standing committee.
why not put a date?
Because it's the way this is, so I'll be, if you could scroll all the way down to the
The
bottom.
cap is one of the
The-
responsibilities.
Yeah, the cap's one of the responsibilities in this. So it doesn't make sense that the capping responsibility if the cap isn't adopted yet. It's putting the cart first. So that's why the effective dates like that. And then see limitations, there's just 3 sentences here. One of them is very simply that this doesn't limit the power of the city council or city manager to take action. If that were not the case, it wasn't explicitly said, then legal might say, hey, this is limiting the ability of those 2. After that, where it says, nor shall anything limit the ability of assembly chair to appoint subcommittees, to make it clear, yes, this committee can go ahead and appoint subcommittees, whether it be a subcommittee on mulch or on communications or something else. And then finally, Bert, I know this was important to you, is that the committee chair can determine the format of how to best structure meetings. So the way how we do meetings here, there would still have to be some changes made, like a roll call of the people on the committee. However, you can still do a rotating chair. There's nothing, you can't do a rotating chair. We can still do checking questions and everything else. And that's why that language is in there, specifically to address that. And then if you could scroll up a little more.
Can I ask a
Yes.
possibly nitpicky question? The subcommittee, does that have to be of committee members or can that be courts and residents?
That is an excellent question. That's one thing which I went back and forth and I had to ask legal on. Whether they have to be members of this committee or if they could have other people.
I would hope that like, I mean, especially with more of the working group style,
Yeah.
it tends to.
Have
you
other
know,
people
sometimes, like Mark comes in as interested in a topic and
Yeah,
three
I
members join in and, you know, it seems like a hurdle if you would have to, it would have to be led or only be.
The actual committee members, even if it is, because the chair of the committee gets to pick how it's formatted, they can still welcome people up to come and participate. They just won't be able to vote on things.
Okay.
And for powers and duties, most committees in our ordinances have powers and duties which they're given. Some have these huge lists. Here I kept it very simple. I went through things that is already been done by Sustainability Committee over time. And essentially to provide advice and guidance to the city council, city manager, and city boards, because that's what we've always done. It just hasn't been that explicit where this is our recommendation on how to achieve these goals. And then the three goals, the big one is implementation of the climate action plan. So it would be giving advice and guidance on how to implement it. It will be the staff who implements the plan. The plan will already be done by the time this comes out, but they still may want thoughts like, hey, what are our recommendations on this? Likewise, I kept the renewable energy policy in there and additional recommendations. And all these came from what's already up on our website, such as increasing energy efficiency, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and taking measures to build resiliency against climate change. So it's pretty broad, but that would be one of the big focuses. Another one, something which this committee has always done, is increasing awareness of sustainable practices among residents, businesses, visitors, municipal staff, and other stakeholders to ensure that Portsmouth remains a leader as an eco municipality. I know it's very broad. That's kind of what we're going for. And then the third one, standing for environmental justice while protecting our ecosystems. Again, that's incredibly broad when it comes to protecting our ecosystems.
Broad enough to be useful.
And the environmental justice, I've used that language before in our renewable energy policy. Obviously, it's not a deal breaker if it comes out, but being Portsmouth, I'd like to ideally keep that in there. And then the next paragraph, it seems confusing, if you could keep scrolling up. So membership and term of committee members, this would be the big change. And one of the mayor's big concerns is the size of the committee, because right now it fluctuates between meetings. I know there's a lot of members not here tonight, whether it be our actual students from the high school, from the Eco Club, because it's school break. And then there's some parents on this committee who aren't here tonight. So it's large. And I'll just, instead of reading this, I'll just explain how this would essentially work. The end state, as this is written, would be just one city councilor. It would be one staff member appointed by the city manager, whoever they want as representative. 2 students, they don't have to be named, from the school system. I kept it really broad because the Eco Club might change names, might be whatever else. And when it comes to the actual number of people on the committee, bear with me here because I have a great memory when it comes to numbers. The final will be 7 and 11 other community members. So that means the final size of the committee could be anywhere between 7 plus 11 to 15 members. So it'd be smaller than it is now. That's the end state. And the question is, how would we get there? So the way this lays out to get there is, once this is after it's adopted, once the climate action plan gets adopted as well, the mayor would pick the city councilor. The city manager would get to pick her representative. The high school, as long as they keep providing students, they'll be rotating. They'll have 2 members that could vote. And then everyone who's currently on the committee, who's a member of the Blue Ribbon Practices, Blue Ribbon Committee on Sustainable Practices.
Commission for Sustainable Practice.
So where they'll automatically be on this, but we'll all be staggered. It'll be a 3-year term. And then through just natural attrition, people leave committees. When people step down, they someone be like, it would just keep shrinking. And it would continue to shrink over the years until it gets down to the larger number. So 11 people, once it hits 10 people of the members who are here now, then the mayor would be able to appoint someone new and be voted on by the city council like anyone else. Meaning, if it takes 3 years, this will be staggered terms, some of us would still come up for reappointment. Now, reappointments aren't always guaranteed, they're not supposed to be. Members have to apply to be reappointed, but that's something which we don't currently do now. We don't have any terms, and we're just here, so we don't feel like coming here anymore, and we go in and out. So that would be a big change. I also put language in here as far as who the chair is. So all the ordinances, they're different. Some committees automatically have a city councilor as the chair, like the Portsmouth Parking, Traffic, and Safety Committee. Other committees, like the Recreation Committee, it goes by seniority. The chair's been there for decades. Here, the way I worded this, it's for the most senior person from the Sustainability Committee, which happens to be Bert, would automatically become the chair of this committee. However, if for whatever reason, like Bert, if the majority of people on the committee don't want you to be chair anymore, if there's a mutiny, then the mayor gets to appoint someone else. So it's just it's a segue. And I think that was the an in-between, and I'm sure this will be discussed by the city council if it gets this far, and by the governance committee, if they think that's the best approach to take. And then the last change, we keep growing up in black, the residency requirement, that's the current language in our ordinance, which essentially says you have to be a resident of the city to be on a committee. However, not everyone in the Eco Club is a resident of the city. Ben Doyle and his sister, 2 years ahead of him, Ella, they live in Greenland. And we don't want to keep students from being on the committee who can go to our school system. So I added in blue, this residency requirement does not apply to students on a commission or authority that attend or could attend classes in the Portsmouth School District. The reason why I said or could attend, Lorley, she doesn't go to, did not go to Portsmouth High School. So there are people who live in our school district, whether they Greenland, Portsmouth, Newcastle, where there's students who could be in our school system, they should be allowed to be on this committee. So it's legal to have to look at that to make sure that's kosher, but the way it's worded would allow essentially 2 representatives from the school district, which the school district would appoint. Essentially, they wouldn't have to be by name, it would simply be who shows up from the Eco Club, like it is now. Yeah.
I have 2 thoughts, questions, whatever, and the first one might be broader, and I don't know if you or Peter had the answer to this, but it goes along with residency, and the reason why I asked it is because I've now had 2 conversations, one with a police officer and one with a firefighter, who are both very sustainably minded and both work for the city of Portsmouth, but neither of them can afford to live here. Has the city ever, and not that I want to designate all our seats, but has the city ever thought about like teachers, firefighters, some of those people who?
So some of the committees designate specifically, I think the economic EDC, where business owners could be on, so necessarily have to be residents the way it's worded. And again, the same manager gets to appoint someone.
I don't.
Peter doesn't live in the city, lives in a very beautiful state, which is in New Hampshire. Yeah.
Well, I guess another point there, not just people that work for the city, but the thing about sustainability is you gain a lot from the communities around you.
Great.
And whether it's in your community and the different communities in your community or different communities outside your community. So we've had people from Maine on the committee before
Yeah.
as members. We've had other, so I'm just wondering where the residency requirement comes from in general. Is it statutory that starts? Where does the origin of residency requirement
That's
start?
a question for legal.
Yeah,
I don't know if it starts with that language, which is currently in the ordinance, section 1.41, or if it's something which is required by legislation.
I wonder if we could do a workaround of the majority. Is resident, because that'll leave, what, how many spot, 7 to 11. You know, it's also an odd number, that's convenient.
Two thoughts there. One is if we change 1401 language, it would change it for all other commissions and authorities. And so
Less.
So that's why I was very specific, where under that language there, another commission or authority would be allowed to have high school student. And then people who are not members of, who don't live in Portsmouth, still attend the meetings, they still participate. Like, I know Mark lives in Portsmouth, they just won't be voting. And again, it goes down to the chair could conduct the meeting essentially however they see fit, so they can like.
Yeah, we can ask legal about putting a clause underneath in the sustainability committee section, right?
Yeah, I think that's also possible.
My other thought was voting for the chair. So we do have conservation.
Yeah, annually, most commissions vote annually.
Open to that.
I mean, not that I'm opposed to Bert being the chair or the senior person, but it's just option 3.
My question just has to do with the responsibilities of the chair, so would the chair be, sounds like the chair is essentially just the person who can decide we can do whatever we want, so would they be able to assign like rotating facilitators and takers, or would they have to facilitate the meeting?
So the primary role of the chair of any committee is essentially to facilitate it. And that's all the chair really does. Sure, they vote last, whatever else, that's just the way how those committees meetings are structured. But here again, the chair could determine how the meeting's gonna be run. Therefore, he doesn't, or she doesn't have to be the one facilitating the meeting. Perfect.
I really like that and appreciate that you put the language down. The question I have is because I was thinking that one of the reasons I like the rotation is that there's ownership. I hate taking notes, but I feel ownership is key to building community. And so I was thinking if the mayor appoints the committee chair, that committee chair then would naturally want to conduct the meetings most conducive to the way that person knows how to run meetings. And most people know how to run meetings that are not in this format. And so I have no particular, in fact, I'm thinking when there's so many people here are such good facilitators that I don't have an investment in being chair. What I'm curious about is how does the group feel about maintaining the culture of a group facilitation, which takes a lot more skill and work and is less frequently used in corporations and businesses, and it comes from a cooperative model. So I'm going to be just like my cardiologist. I've been running for years. I'm not going to be here that many more years. So I think it's really important that how do we feel about that? And I think it'd be very easy to go back to a traditionally run meeting. And it will be a functional meeting like the other ones are. Or is it important enough to say, we would like to keep the chairpersonship within the committee, generated by the committee as a title, so there's somebody you can address to. And the culture of the committee is going to be such as this. And that might lock it in and be very dysfunctional for people who don't care about it, or don't know about it. So I just raise it as a question and want people's input.
You wanna do a show of hands, maybe?
Well, I can do it easy.
Okay.
All right. How do you feel? You would like to keep a rotating chairship. You're neutral. You think it could work either way, or you actually prefer more traditional way. When everybody put your fist out. The truth will make you free. This is right or wrong. And are you ready? 1, 2, 3, show. So we have 1 to keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so a little bit more, but that's a really important issue. And I think more than likely, unless somebody has a big investment in it, it's really easy to go back to a traditional meeting.
I think that goes to what Jess was gonna say, right? Like if we did a vote for chair, then essentially what we just did would become that, right? You're voting for who has the ability to.
I think a better term use is facilitate versus chair. Because the chair's gonna be the chair, but they don't necessarily be the ones facilitating.
Yeah, like Bert is still the chair of the
Yeah.
committee. You're still the chair of the committee, but
But
you're not the
rotate still.
facilitator every night, only once your turn comes up.
That's right.
Right. So is this might be language thing? Is it that the chair has the ability to decide on how it's facilitated? The language. Like, do we need to change it to there's a chair and the committee gets to decide how it's
Or
facilitated?
determine the
Well,
format
I think
of
the chair
how
gets-
best to structure meetings, determine the format and
If we look at paragraph C,
Here it is.
determine the facilitation
Here.
or format. I get facilitation to that.
what about if we said, nor shall anything herein limit the ability of the sustainability committee to appoint subcommittees or determine the format of
I
how to
like
best structure the meetings? Because it hands it back to the group.
Okay.
You're gonna take the chair out.
Yeah, so there's still a chair,
Maybe
but it's the committee who
one
gets to.
subcommittees or determine the format of how
So
to
the chair's
best
like,
structure.
figurehead. Chair's making.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That's easy.
Facilitate.
Yeah, chair is facilitating, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, we just eliminate the word chair.
Yeah.
To appoint subcommittees or determine the format of how to best structure meetings. I think that constitutes the goal.
I agree.
Right, and John, I know you spent a lot of time looking at the mechanics for the succession and how to keep the numbers of people, and I appreciate that, that's great. But I just wanted to point out, I really like what you wrote about powers and duties, and I think having environmental justice explicit is a value of this group, so. You know, if it comes up, maybe we should vote on it. Are we voting on this whole piece?
We could vote just to move forward in the process. And two more quick thoughts, if I may. I didn't include some from the school board. We easily can, just the mayor's concern to limit any numbers. And right now, the size of the committee is 11 to 15 people. We want to keep it odd. We want to keep it 11 to 15, it would just be one less person from the community if we had someone from the school board. That's why I eliminated the second city councilor. It's just so it could be more
We usually
community.
have at least 2 city staff, right?
Well, it's as many city
I'm sorry.
staff could attend, just one's gonna be voting.
Oh,
if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And the other thing I say, when it comes to the language, there's other language which the committee uses a lot, like the natural step, using the, referring to drawdown, system processes. I didn't want to use that language here because it just didn't seem appropriate, but it's not going to change anything regardless of whether it's included or not. It's however the committee wants to.
I'd still want someone from the school board, attending the meetings if possible. They just might not be able to vote, or they wouldn't be obligated to be there.
I'd reach out to the school board.
So funny, it's such a difficult time with committees anyway. And some of the blue ribbon committees, there is a school board rep on and others there is not. So it's, I think this is an opportunity to find that, but
I will give the chair of the school board a call to see what if she has a preference.
Yeah, because I struggle with, right, I mean, our future is all about those individuals are going through our school system right now. And I think it is so important to have somebody from the school board, and the Eco Club is great, but I think the school board also.
Yeah, I had helped be on kid, and try and translate the message of the committee.
The future of our community, right?
there's also a lovely overlap with some of the, I mean, I happen to chair the policy committee. There is a lot of places where there's influence from this that can step into the policy committee in a really valuable way. So there's lots of places that I would say it makes sense to have a school board member.
A safer thing to do, and I could easily add it back in. And then when it goes through the process, it could be taken out, whether it's the chair of the school board says, this might not be a good fit, or somewhere along the line. So that might be a safer bet. Just the caveat there is to be one less person in the general public.
Voting member.
Voting member.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So how does it work once we're down to that number and there's a slot open?
So
You have multiple people.
So all the committees are different, but here the mayor would appoint somebody, and the city council would vote on them. So like right now on the city clerk's page, but there's a list of vacancies. And someone could go through like, oh, I'm gonna join this committee. Normally they reach out to the chair, they attend a couple meetings, decide if it's for them, and if so, they submit an application. It goes to the city council at one meeting just to be noticed, and then at the next meeting, we would vote on it, and that person would be appointed to a 3-year term.
I guess more so if you have multiple people,
Oh, yeah, multiple.
is it a
It would,
seniority? Is it just choice mayor?
the choice of the mayor.
Okay, that's true.
Most committees, it's choice of mayor. There's really random ones out there where the chair proposes to the mayor.
There's one thing in the membership and terms, the appointments made by like the mayor and the city manager, and then 2 students to be designated by the Portsmouth School District. But that needs a who, right?
Well, I left the who out and left it really. Like,
That gives the
Nothing.
district the opportunity to say, Eagle Club can choose, or the principal can choose, rather than if we designate it straight to the
But it's
principal.
not the
Yeah.
Portsmouth School District can't designate.
well, they,
By chain of command, they can.
They
Because
can.
technically, the superintendent's head of Portsmouth School District, so that can say, I designated the principal who says, I am gonna hand that over to the Eco Club.
here it's very vague because.
Yeah.
It's intentionally vague, that way students could just show up until the school district says, you know what, we want to set an actual process here. Because as far as we're concerned, as long as we have students show up, as far as the ordinance is concerned, there gets to be 2 students that get to vote.
Are people ready to make the recommendation to send this forward, or are we concerned that our whole committee isn't here tonight and we need to hear from them before we make that recommendation?
It's,
What do you need from this group this evening?
since the majority's here, if the majority of people are comfortable with this, continuing to move down this month-to-month process, then I'd be comfortable doing that. But if the majority of people would rather wait, we could wait a month and then begin the process. My personal preference would be to refer it, that way we can start the process, and at any point we can still weigh in until second reading. So we have any changes.
Yeah, I'd love to see it moved along, but the thing is, I think we had a suggestion for someone. That we could vote for the chair instead of doing seniority. I
Yes.
don't know
Yeah,
the
I-
decision was made.
The,
So, and then we did decide to remove the word chair. I think you noted that, Josh.
Yes, so paragraph C, so if we go, I know we're only have 5 minutes left, if you go up to paragraph B real fast.
So just a for order of operations, if this is not gonna kick in until the cap. Which is not gonna be done until
Take this for.
like, like, I'm just trying to think, like, is there a need for a rush? Or do we do these edits, get it out to the rest and vote?
Yeah. If we start this now, this might be voted on by.
Okay, but are we gonna have the cap by November anyways?
We don't know, but come November, the city council won't be voting.
What happens to this
That's why we
community?
want to get it done.
No, yeah, I know, I'm just literally thinking about timing, just because, in general, I mean, on this one, I don't think we're allowed to push off, but in general, this went out yesterday. And, that's just not a lot of time, so.
It will also get legal review and Kate and you worked on this together and Kate did a lot of the governance and you've got a lot of.
Governance committee's gonna review it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not personally against moving it, I'm just saying, like, if this were another thing that maybe people did have opinions on. We would maybe give it a month,
For
I'm
us
just saying.
to, could you come back to us next meeting and give an update, and maybe with other members
Yeah.
in there, we could be like,
And
maybe
we
we should
could
not.
easily, when it goes from the government committee, like they can make recommendations, any recommendations that this committee comes up with, when it comes back for. Second reading, I can make those changes, or any council can make those changes, so this language is probably gonna change a good amount.
Okay.
But just to.
I
get
just
the
wanna
vote.
make sure that it's, that
Yeah.
there is room for that, if there was anybody who wasn't here and for some reason is uncomfortable with
Well, do we want to entertain a motion then to move this along as is?
With the,
With your change.
With the changes.
And
I'll do that.
why, as Josh just mentioned, that the verbiage you can't change.
Yeah.
It's not like we're meetings.
no, we're just committed to moving it along.
So Laura,
I
you
think
made
it's
the
worth
motion,
putting in.
does somebody second the motion? Effie seconds it, did you get that? Bert?
Well, who made the motion?
Laura Lee
Laura, okay.
and Effie seconded.
And
Or we can
procedurally, do we need to do a vote, or is it just a vote,
We
motion?
should vote on a motion,
Yes.
So
so
you want me to articulate my motion?
Not emo.
It's all vote on. I second that.
Normally it was your motion
No,
to
we can just to
begin the
begin the
process.
process with your amendments.
Okay.
Did you get that language?
Begin the process.
Yeah, with the noted language changes that Counselor Wolf made.
Changes.
That's what Counselor Denton.
You want to give a shout out for how you personalize the ordinance and not just made it so it could be better
It's true.
piece of regulation, because I feel like it really speaks to the aspect of we're really getting with the culture to continue through to the standings. So yeah, thank you.
It is 8:28. I have an AP chemistry student at 8:45, so we will do our check. The AP exams are next week, so.
Still gotta vote.
We actually-
Asking, we have to. Oh, so we had, oh yeah, we had a second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor. Aye. Motion passes. Motion passes.
Can you guys not vote?
Neither of us are appointed. So.
Oh.
maybe we'll be able to vote in the future.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So continuing with our tradition, let's take a moment to go around and share one takeaway that you have from today's meeting. Would you like to start?
I'm impressed with your facilitation skills. Thank you.
I agree, and I really think you did a great job, so but that's one point. The other point is that I'm really thankful and kind of proud of the Right Action Portsmouth Climate Action Group's effort. And, you know, me saying, well, if you want to do it, then go ahead and do it. And you did. So there you go. So, it was great.
I definitely second that, all the legwork and behind the scenes that everyone's been putting into all the different Right Action and the community engagement, helping the CAP, getting volunteers together and spreading the word. It's tremendously helpful to not have to do it on our own as city staff and not have to have our consultants do the brunt of it, but to have us reach out to people we know, reach out to people they know, and we're getting a good mix of people that we might not have expected. So it's really nice to see it all coming together and reaching different crowds.
I liked seeing the platform today. That was the first time I actually seen that, and I think it has a ton of potential. As long as they get people to come back to it. So I think there's a lot of
Enough to work on that strategies. I was really impressed with Mark coming in. He reached out to you folks here at the city, and that's so encouraging. We'd like to see more residents come up with some ideas, come in here, and not only just, you know, pitch it or complain that we're not doing something, but be willing to volunteer their time to help move some of these initiatives forward. So kudos to him.
I want to echo those two. Right Action, outstanding job. I had already signed up and run through it, and I learned a bunch about it today ahead of speed. So looks great and well done. And Mark, thank you very much. Mark's sitting next to you. Yes, kudos to Mark for pulling it all together and bringing it to us. Yeah, that's good.
I'm impressed with Bert's note taking.
Write that down.
Yeah, right, actually. I did. So I'm glad you're working.
Yes, I would echo that for all your initial work on Right Action and for you taking the helm and getting it over the finish line to get it up and running. It's really awesome to see.
Yeah, I don't know why people are looking at me, because, you know, I did this much, Effie did this much, and people knew how much time and energy she put in getting us to this point. She was the wind beneath our wings.
And I would also just, I'm grateful to have Peter for all your knowledge and your years of experience, but Kate too, the way you started your job, just sort of as all this amped up and you have just jumped in and that's so impressive. Like you have done such a good job at getting up to speed and being able to speak to things and guide us and facilitate things. Like, thank you.
Like her, I'm equally impressed with Mark. He's just an ordinary citizen who's not even sustainably minded, who maybe just wants some free mulch. Emailing the city and trying to make something happen, he's like follow through on that. And so that's, like you said, it's so encouraging, and it's why I love living in Portsmouth.
Yeah, kind of echoing that, I feel like every conversation we had tonight really just ended up coming back to community engagement and open communication and involving as many people in sustainability as possible. And, you know, whether it was how we form our committee moving forward or how we do our events, or literally how we have apps to do this, even when they're not in this room, or Mark coming from the community, I think that says a lot, and it makes it very obvious that that is the main goal of this committee. It's just nice to see it so naturally part of every conversation.
I loved hearing how well attended the sustainability fair was, along with the events. So like many things, always impressed with the growing number of people who are interested in what this committee stands for.
Please leave this meeting inspired and having learned more than when I arrived. And the Bright Actions is awesome. I think it's a perfect follow-up with our families that we just connected with on Earth Day, because kids love games and they love to challenge their parents. So I think there's a space there to start those relationships early and have them. There are lots of things that kids, they're always asking, how can I get involved? How can I make a difference? I think Bright Action is a really great spot for that. And it's accessible and it's family friendly. So that's my takeaway. I appreciate the kudos for facilitating. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Yes, and I see those in favor. Have a great month.
That was the first, I think that the first time we've had a motion to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
No, maybe she wants some stuff, right?
Check out.
I sent it out, so I can make the edits and send it out, just add it to the minutes.